Hi, guys. Welcome to our next session of the Leadership Ladder. I am so glad to have you all with me. Last week, we talked a bit about, or last session, we talked about the process of what it takes to become a leader, or what the leadership process should look like. This week, we're going to talk a little bit more about the ways of developing an effective and authentic leadership style. We'll dive into a bit about the five basic characteristics it takes to become an effective leader, and then talk a little bit about how we can get there. Keep in mind, these days it's a very difficult task to be an effective and authentic leader and sustainable, more specifically. There's a lot of demands that are put on each and every one of you on a daily basis, and I want to make sure that each of you take the time to replenish and renew yourself. You've got a lot that rides on your shoulders, and sometimes that can be overwhelming. So, really kind of developing and being in touch with who you are is one of those first basic characteristics of a leader. And it's what we term as being self aware or self awareness. There is no possibility of being an effective leader unless you're aware of who you are and what your strengths and deficits may look like. Um, it's easy to recognize some of the things we do well, but keep in mind we are not one size fit all leaders, right? We don't just kind of buy a leadership kit out of a box and say, "Oh man, I'm a leader now," right? Part of being a leader or part of leading others is having a deep understanding of yourself and who you are and how you relate to others. And that there's a range to that, right? There are many different ways for you to assess your leadership skills, your leadership styles, some of those things we can share, and really kind of be honest with what your strengths and your deficits look like, right? The more we can focus on what our perceived deficits are or our identified deficits, the more opportunity we have at development. And as we develop, we can naturally impart that skill to others so that they can develop as well. Okay. So being self aware is one of those highly critical, highly crucial basic characteristics that is important to develop as you look at developing your leadership style. Yeah, another basic um, characteristic of being a leader is, do you have a burning desire to lead, right? Some of us want to lead, but we don't know why. We're not sure, what our purpose is. Are we just wanting to lead as a result of, um, having the title, or are we wanting to lead because we truly have that burning passion to make others experience the next step in their evolution? That's a big task all by itself. So as you're assessing yourself, as we look at that self awareness, are you self motivated? Are you self confident? Um, do you have the drive and energy and the intensity to identify where others are in their journey and help them to realize their goals and create success? Those are tools that are critical for a leader to actually have and possess. So that desire, that burn to lead, that persistence, that confidence within yourself will help to instill values and core success in those you plan to lead. Okay. But you have to possess that yourself in order for someone else to see that. Okay. Do you have an ability to create a vision? Are you someone who understands where you're going very clearly, can give directions on how to get there and help others to get there or align with you, even if they may not agree or understand the vision, right? That's the ability, that's another critical step, crucial step in terms of how you look at developing. These are things that are a non-negotiable. You have to have these things. You have to be aware that these are the things that are going to help you to be that effective leader. Um, It's not necessary to be a genius or to be the smartest person in the room or even the biggest subject matter expert, but the ability to create a vision and follow that, right? Some people are so passionate about where they're going and what their plans are and how they plan to get there that there's no stopping them. They're myopic, they're very singularly focused. As a leader, not only are you myopic and singularly focused, but you have the ability to actually help others to identify what that vision looks like for them as well. So it's a very um, carefully fine-tuned, fine-edged kind of process when we're talking about creating a vision. There's a lot of step-by-step activity that it takes to kind of get there. So again, being able to really evaluate and analyze yourself, knowing what kind of person you truly are, that's one of those areas of improvement that everyone can benefit from. Is sometimes we don't do enough self-reflection. We're so beat up by the world as a whole, we feel like we want to protect at least how we think we see ourselves, right? And the reason I said how we think we see ourselves, let's face it, from time to time, we all lie to ourselves, right? We're not talking about other people. It's very easy to lie to other people. It's very easy to deceive someone else because only you know the real story. Only you know what's really going on inside of you, right? Everything you share out is only what you feel the need to share. But sometimes when we lie to ourselves, which is true, we're not always honest in where we are in our business or our interpersonal relationships or financially where we sit in our lives. We kind of make stories so that we don't feel like we just want to jump off a very big rock every single day, right? But in order for you to really get finely honed in terms of where you're wanting to go, look at yourself honestly. If you know that you have a big goal or you want to be somewhere that's very grand, identify where you're standing right now. If you want to be in Cincinnati, Ohio, but you're in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, without a car, without a bicycle, without a bus pass, without money, how are you going to get to Cincinnati, right? That's part of creating vision, right? Understanding where I'm at. I'm here in Milwaukee, right here and now. I don't have a thing in terms of resource to get me to Cincinnati, Ohio. What are the steps I need to take? That's how detailed you need to be when you're talking about generating vision. I know that was a very broad and wild way to get to vision, but I think you understand what I'm talking about. Another basic characteristic of as we look at developing as leaders is people skills. Believe it or not, some leaders don't interrelate with people very well. There's lots of leaders who are like that. Think about some people who are great visionaries. One particular gentleman comes to mind, the one who helped to redefine Apple and put Apple on the map, a gentleman by the name of Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was a visionary, as people will say, but some of Steve Jobs' deficits were he was not the best people person by all accounts. Some would argue, was he really a good leader? Sometimes when you're a solid visionary, remember I just gave an example of Milwaukee to Cincinnati with no resources. Sometimes when you're a great visionary, even lacking people skills, people will follow, right? Because your vision is so strong. There's so much passion and energy behind what that vision is. That's that true desire, that burn to lead, that you forget about there are other people in the world that exist right alongside of you, but they're willing to follow you, right? They're willing to follow your leadership direction because the vision is so strong. Okay. And that it's to put a finer point on how solid that vision needs to be. But for most of us on a day to day, we recognize we're in the world with others. We recognize our words have power, that our words can be hurtful to others. All of these things we're very well aware well of. And so we tend to work on our people skills more often than we do on our vision. The reason being is we're human beings at the end of the day. We are driven by gratitude. We are driven by the approval of others, right? We have an inherent need to be liked, most of us. And so that can sometimes impact how you lead. We spend so much time working on our people skills that we often don't focus on what the project is at hand. And again, part of working on people skills is nobody likes to be rejected, but with people skills and as you look at developing yourself, sometimes it's about delivering the message that no one wants to hear in a way that presents effective communication while still motivating other people, right? That's what part of being a leader is getting the job done even though it may be distasteful to others. So keep in mind, leadership is not always just about being liked or having people appreciate you and think you're the best. It's about being able to keep people focused on how to get to the vision, even if there are some uncomfortable, unpleasant, or unwanted activities to get you there. Okay. And then what goes along with creating a division, a division, creating a vision is, you've got to have an edge, right? Sometimes, people say there's a fine line between cockiness and confidence. I'm not sure I agree with that. I think sometimes when we're confident, or some people may term it overconfident, it rubs people the wrong way. Again, it goes back to those people skills. Um, I don't I don't know if I fully agree with that content, with that concept. Sometimes we are just so right about what it is that we're doing that you really don't have the time or the energy to entertain someone else's skepticism. And when people feel like they don't have the ability to input into your vision because they feel or they see or think they may see a flaw, or they think that their contribution may enhance whatever your vision is, sometimes that just does, those two things don't align, right? Again, when you're hyper focused on the direction that you're wanting to go, again, Milwaukee to Cincinnati, somebody may say, well, you know what? If we camp over in uh, Minnesota, we might be able to wait until the winter passes and then we can, you know, panhandle and, you know, get money for a train to Chicago. And, then they start to divert the plan or the vision. And the next thing you know, you're nowhere near where you wanted to be because you allowed somebody um, to derail your plans. That's why like I said, I don't agree with or completely agree with the cockiness, confidence, or overconfidence. I believe you're either confident or you're not. And sometimes confidence has an air to it. And some people may call that an edge, right? I've got the edge. I'm the subject matter expert. I'm hyper focused on my vision. I've got the skills to get there. That's when we talk about people who turn into CEO material, those folks who are not going to let detractors push them off their line, no matter what they say, no matter how negative they may be. It's critical that you remain where you plan to be. Okay. So let's kind of dive in a little bit with what it is to get to know ourselves, right? We all have a desire to get to know ourselves. We think sometimes that we know ourselves, but in reality, sometimes when we're feeling a bit melancholy, a bit off, a bit um, misaligned with ourselves, it's because we're not clear as to who we are. We do things on a day to day functionally just because we feel that we should do them. We're kind of taught these things when we're young. We always want to, quote unquote, do what's right, all those things. And sometimes those things are at odds with each other. Sometimes those things don't align. I want to just go wild and do something crazy and stupid. Yeah, but that might cause trouble, or that might not be something that other people may expect from me. So therefore, I won't do it. Right. And that's when we sometimes get into conflict. And conflict internally can actually stall any activity that we do, right? When we're focused on maintaining a certain image or a certain position with others, um, and we're internally conflicted. In other words, we want to do something else, but we're afraid of what the consequences or the outcome may look like. And that definitely creates inactivity all the way around. It's a kind of a paralytic effect, right? It literally paralyzes us in our track because our body is a very smart tool. You couple that with your brain, those two combined, they know exactly what's going on. So we may think our thoughts are the drivers, but literally your body is the driver. It will tell you when it's at odds. It manifests in ways of illness or as I said, complete inactivity, which sometimes we process and say that is, depression or melancholy, right? So, as you look at getting to know yourself, understand what your true wants and needs are. And that goes a long way in your leadership style. I know you're looking at how are we getting all the way over here when we're talking about being a leader. And again, an effective leader is that person who has stripped away all of the BS, all of the noise, all of the nonsense, all of the armor, let's call it, that we put around ourselves on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly life journey um, to protect our real, true identity or who we feel that we are. So we put on all this stuff, and then sometimes all this stuff that we have on us, allows us to not look at that thing internally that we're actually protecting, which is us. So um, as you look at focusing on you, we do what's called a quick inventory. What are the things that I need to keep me happy, whole, and healthy on a daily basis? Am I really where I want to be in my life, right? Again, we talked last session about being a transformational leader, um, or a team-oriented leader. And when you're able to really reflect on what it is that I really, really want to do in my life, am I doing those things? Am I just kind of treading water until I can figure out where I want to be, or am I the person I want to be, or am I with the person that I want to be with? We're looking at all these things, but again, we do many things simply based on the fact that, well, this is what I've always done. This is kind of what's expected of me. This is what others appreciate about me, and we never think about, are these the things that actually provide fulfillment with me? So sometimes we harm ourselves when we go through that process. And the goal is to harness, what really drives you so that others can be motivated by the things that you do. So the first thing we look at is what's our game plan. Again, when we're looking at our strengths and weaknesses, that's a critical step. I mean, as we're doing that inventory, outline all the things you absolutely know you're good at, right? These immutable facts that no one could deny. No one could say, nope, you're not good at, I don't know, jumping rope, tennis, whatever it is. All the things you're good at, no matter how big or how small you think those things are, the things that you know confidently, if anybody said, hey, what's this thing? You are the subject matter expert for that thing. Those are the things we want to harness. All the things you're good at. Those things you're good at can also help you with your people skills because people like to align with things they like as well. So recognizing your strengths, literally outlining them on a piece of paper, on a document that can be manipulated, is the most effective way to go. Because when you have something that you can actually physically interrelate with, like a document, you can throw that document away, you can give it to someone else, you can scribble out the things that you don't agree with, you can add the things that you may have forgotten to add, all these things. It's taken out of your head and actually put into the real world in which we live, right? Your brain is a constantly movable entity. It is firing thoughts and ideas and adjusting those thoughts and ideas in milliseconds every single day. That's why when we create a plan in our head, it doesn't always get realized because it's always in motion. But when you're creating true and actual motion, you're putting it out on paper. That way it can be shared with others, right? Verbally, we don't always communicate well. In our brain, it sounds like, the most brilliant manifesto ever written. But in reality, others are like, what the hell did he say? I've got questions. I'm not sure what that actually means. But when we're able to write it out, we can share it. We can make adjustments. Others can actually participate. Okay. That's how we start to build effective leadership. On the other hand, we also want to write down all of those deficits, all of those things that we're not good at, right? Some of us think we're not good communicators because we feel shy. Shy is a word people use often. I'm very shy, but what does shy actually mean? Shy simply means I have difficulty in the way I communicate verbally with others. We none of us like to experience rejection, so we look at that and we say, well, I don't want to experience rejection. So rather than experience rejection, I just won't put myself out there. Or you may have had bad experiences with others that have caused you to kind of withdraw inwardly. But we need to overcome those things. So, literally, on the same document as you highlighted your strengths, you want to highlight your weaknesses. It's similar to, if you think about it, when we do wants and needs analysis with our buyers and sellers. We're writing down what they actually have to have, or what they, desire to have, right? Needs are those things I absolutely need, absolutely have to have. Wants are those things I'd like to have, but it's not a deal breaker if I don't get it. In order to overcome your weaknesses, we've got to identify what those things are. And again, I'm going to draw back to that statement of honesty. When we start to lie to ourselves, right, it will never get at the things that are holding us back. Okay. So, another way of outlining or identifying your strengths and weaknesses is don't focus on language that says, you know what, this is just who I am. And if somebody doesn't like it, screw them, right? Because what we're actually saying, what we're actually telling ourselves and telling others, which is, I don't believe I have an ability to change or grow. So this is what I'm left with, and I'm giving up. That's essentially what we say every time we say, no, this is who I am, and others are going to have to deal with it. And the reason I can back that up and support that is the fact that you are not the same person you were even as recently as yesterday, right? But we can go back historically and absolutely point to key changes in your world as to who you are as a human being, right? You are not the same person that you were when you were 5. You're not the same person that you were when you were 10 or 20 or 25 or 30, and so on, right? Each and every iteration of yourself is an improvement, and it allows you to jettison the things or the skills that you've learned along the way that just stop working. Every skill we learned in life, many of them become maladaptive. They just stop working. They're non-functional. And we don't want to carry around that baggage of tools that no longer serve a purpose. So we have to let them go. We have to offboard them from, our personal existence so that we can pick up new tools and have the space for those new tools so that we can function effectively. And that's one thing that a leader does, is a leader is never afraid to dump the things that aren't working within themselves, within their vision, within their plan, because that's how we get there. That's what makes us a craftsman, right? DNA is kind of a myth when we talk about it. It's not something that we do because it's in our DNA. It's literally a myth. You're an evolving, growing, changing, developing human machine. And, be respectful of that process. It's what's a life design. Okay. So, um, as a leader, we also want to talk about what motivates you. I've talked in other sessions about what is motivation, and why is it such a thing? Why is it such a thing that we put so much focus towards? Some people say that motivation is money. I want to be rich, or there are things that I want to have, or something to that effect, right? But we know in reality that money is not a motivator. Money is a tool. Money is a Money is energy that allows us to do the things that we want to do. It's uh, of no value on its own, right? Each and every one of you could have $1 million in the closet right now, $2 million, $5 million. Sky's the limit, $10 billion, whatever number you want to assign to that. But if that money does nothing, in other words, if it doesn't take you to where you want to be in your life. If it doesn't allow you or afford you the opportunity to do the things that you feel that you need to do in order to grow and feel whole, things that create additional passion and desire for you, the money's of no value. So money's not a motivator. But as a leader, really defining what motivates you. We talked about those five characteristics, and again, if there's not a burning desire, if there's not a passion um, for you to actually lead others, you have to ask yourself, why am I doing it? Right. And again, if the motivation's money, if I lead others, then I'll be able to get a piece of their money. The likelihood of them following you based on a quasi vision gets very small. So when we talk about motivation, let's ask a couple of defining questions of yourself, right? Assess your motivation. Are you a person who's energized when people count on you for ideas? When they come to you for ideas, are you that person who just gets, oh, thanks for sharing that with me. Let's problem solve, right? That's a question. Are you that person that you feel energized when people count on you for ideas? Are you a person who asks other people challenging questions when you're working on a project together? Or are you a person who's just kind of in attendance, kind of participatory? Um, do you take delight in complimenting other people um, when they're making progress in a particular task or um, design in a project, right? Are you that person who's okay to let somebody know, hey, you're doing a great job, really appreciate where you're going? Um, do you find it easy to be a cheerleader for other people? In other words, can you celebrate someone else's successes, or do you feel jealousy? Do you feel shame or disappointment when you see others succeed because you feel like you're not succeeding, right? Um, when your team accomplishes something, are you more proud of the team accomplishing something, or do you feel somewhat slighted because it wasn't your own personal accomplishment? Um, those are some things that you want to think about. And again, as we talk about that road to honesty, that's part of how we get there. Uh, do people often take your ideas and build upon those ideas, right? They take what you said and they were like, all right, this is what we decided to do. And they move on and start doing those things? Or do you find that, people often listen to your ideas, but then want to make adjustments, right? That's about trust. That's about, am I that visionary person? um, when you're involved in big group projects or team projects, um, are you looking to build cohesiveness within the team, or are you isolating the team to where you're only focused on certain individuals and not allowing them to interact well with each other? Okay. Do you find pleasure in recognizing and celebrating the accomplishment of others comfortably? Again, that's a very big task. And as we look at our self assessment of who we are, it's natural to feel jealousy when someone else succeeds and we don't, right? Because we want that thing so bad. And when we see someone else get it and somewhat easily, it causes us internal frustration. Okay. Do you consider yourself a convincing person, or are you an influential person? We talked about this a couple of sessions ago, and what the difference of that looks like. Um, some of these things are the things that we really um, we steer away from on our day to day living our day-to-day existence because we're just not sure what it means if we change, right? Sometimes we're so married to the things that we're used to doing that change would be such a disruptor. But if you think about life, the best leaders are constantly off balance, right? The best leaders are constantly off balance because the world is constantly off balance, right? There's change every single second of every single day, right? And we need to be flexible and fluid enough to accommodate those changes while still maintaining a solid vision and a solid focus on where we need to be. All right, I'm going to stop there just in the interest of time. And in our next session, we will pick up with um, how to assess our self confidence. I hope that this provided you a bit of insight today. Um, Again, I will say see you next week for the Leadership Ladder series, and we will pick up on the self confidence. Thanks for